good. Is everybody ready to start to discuss that in the group? Yes. Wonderful. Okay. How's everybody travelling? How did that feel for you, the assessment? How was it? Was it great, like actually watching something that was actually involved about what we were talking about yesterday as well? Sort of incorporating a lot of what we've learned? Great. Okay. Wonderful. So what I'll do is we'll go through and just to have a verbal discussion about this now, so to identify what you thought possibly might be some of the responses. And it's a good idea to become involved and find out about the responses and engage. So we'll go through the answers together and such. So okay, so you had question 1, which was which work and legal practices and guidelines does the worker need to take into consideration in this scenario? And you had to tick 2 responses to that. So work practices and also legal. How did you go with that, with work practices? What did you think you actually saw within that video? Confidentiality and duty of care. Brilliant. Everybody else, you thought confidentiality and duty of care? Anybody who might have thought differently?
She also thanked her for being punctual.
She thanked her for being punctual. She did. Yeah, definitely. Would you see that as, when we think about 2 responses, what do you think might be the most vital ones there? Would that be duty of care and confidentiality maybe, in your view?
Yeah.
Great. Wonderful. Okay. What about 2 of legal? What legal practices or guidelines did you see in the video?
Mandatory reporting for the legislation and legal support.
Okay, so mandatory reporting and legal support. Everybody thought that that was the responses for that? Anyone different thoughts? No? Okay, brilliant. Well done. So that's question 1. Question 2. Which of these key messages should the worker convey to Penny to create a safe environment to disclose domestic violence? What did you think that she was actually, the messages that she needed to convey?
Well, she actually said that every woman deserves to live without violence.
She actually did say that, didn't
Yeah.
she? Yeah. So she identified it, didn't she? Every
Yeah.
woman has a right to live free without violence. Yes, she did. And what else do you think happened within that? What other key messages should the worker convey? Sorry?
Explaining the conversation will be confidential, however.
Yeah, explain the confidential. Yes. Yeah, the confidential. Explain that the conversation will be confidential. However, if any information was to be shared, the worker would obtain consent from Penny prior to doing so. Yeah, brilliant. And that's important, isn't it? Because the confidentiality part of around that particular discussion and limitations and advising about mandatory reporting. Did everybody else feel that they were the 2 responses? Yeah? No different? Brilliant. Okay, so question 3. Which categories of abuse and violence were presented in this scenario? So we need to tick the 3, or to have 3 that we're going to discuss together now. Physical? Yes. Emotional? And verbal. Yeah, brilliant. Did anybody see any other categories?
Yes, technology in terms of his checking the phone.
Yes. Yes, that's right. Could be, yeah, definitely. There's the technology facilitated abuse there as well. So when we're thinking of, possibly we could have 4, couldn't we? It could be 4. There could be physical, emotional, verbal, and technology. Okay. So question 4. What communication skills did the worker use to enable Penny to disclose domestic violence? So this is more about the communication skills that you would have seen displayed. How was she with Penny?
Asked her, have you open questions?
Yep. Ask Penny open questions. She asked a lot of clothes as well. Okay. Yeah. Right. Yeah. So it displayed some of those, points around how a discussion might take place. But again, different in a different way. You might do it differently, and differently to what you do as part of your organisation and policies as well. Yeah. So okay. So she did ask some open questions. What else do you think she did to display to Penny? She was there to listen and provide support. What else did she do? Non-judgmental. Yeah, that has been talked about a lot yesterday, hasn't it? And again today it will be, because non-judgmental is it's one of those important components. What else do you think she did? She did some reflection. So you saw some of that reflecting of feelings, so she actually identified maybe how Penny was feeling and discussed that with Penny? Yeah. Okay.
I felt she was
Ah. Yeah.
I think it's a little bit
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
It is a bit scripted. I think it's the script, it's for assessment.
I didn't feel so much. So that,
Yeah. So maybe a little bit more of that empathy could have been displayed. But that's great to look at it that way, like to see it as a learning tool and how you would be different with that type of role. But again, it's a script. But no, thank you. Thanks for sharing that. Okay, question. Back to question 5. So we can turn the page over now. You ever done that free ask any open questions, was non-judgmental and she reflected on feelings. So number 5, so when we're thinking about the responding part of it, what information did the worker assess for complexity or urgency so priority issues could be addressed? So what was she looking for to ask about the urgency of Penny's safety and for the children? Yeah, so she asked Penny if she was safe to return home. Yeah.
She asked about the violence.
And she asked
Yeah, but she
about
didn't actually ask him if he'd been violent recently. She didn't actually directly ask that question.
She did ask if it was getting worse, so she was asking questions to ascertain how the level was.
So there wasn't as much of a, it could have been unpacked a little bit more, do you feel, about the safety around George's
Especially,
violence?
if you're dealing with someone who doesn't just stick an image, you can't always be very subtle and
So it's about explaining a little bit more, unpacking, asking other questions.
I was a little uncertain.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Right.
I knew that was the one they wanted, right?
Yes, and that's why it's great to have these discussions, because when we have the discussions and you bring out all these things that possibly we might want to amend on different things like
Well, I
that.
thought that's probably the right answer, but I didn't think.
If she
I
asked
didn't think
you-
it was clear enough.
I think she was clarifying with her as well, and trying to be asking the question in a safe way that didn't feel try to threaten her. So she was not giving it to her directly, but she was ascertaining.
She didn't say when was the last time. Can you explain when there's no, what was it like? She didn't talk about.
I think she did say like, has the violence been escalated?
Yeah.
And she said yes,
Yeah,
it
we
has
got
been.
that.
So it is, I think I thought I remember.
Escalation.
Yeah.
There
So
is a
it's-
little bit
so
of
it's-
that.
It's probably a month ago.
Yeah.
I think it's probably.
What are some other thoughts about that? Maybe it could have been unpacked a little bit more? You thought it was, yeah, it was there and it was asked, okay.
I think she
I think
did it in
this-
a good way, because she went around it in a way that made her feel safe and didn't come at her, in a threatening way.
You've got to try and think of it from the client's point of view, Marilyn. The client has got to have, you can't be totally so subtle that it's not clear that you're asking did it happen this morning or yesterday. or the day
Depends on the
before.
type of client. If the client, as you said before, if it was English as a second language, I guess, you will, yeah, but you get your report of the client and say, as well.
This is great,
So
because,
to report and trust
Yes.
the risks we're facing.
yes, this is good.
You have to be able to build that instant
Yeah.
report of trust.
So maybe the scale of how dangerous is that violence? Yeah.
Because if
Yeah.
they don't trust you, they're not gonna open up. If they instantly feel threatened in any way, they're gonna go, yep,
They're not going to disclose
Yeah.
it further or shut down. But this is where it just shows we're all different in our approaches and how we'd actually approach something.
Yeah.
So, which is fine, because it's an individual thing, isn't it? But again, it's about safety. Was the safety checked? So it's about how much, maybe it might be different, might unpack it a bit more, but the safety was addressed about his violence. Yeah.
I'm just thinking in that situation too, she knew she had 15 minutes with the client.
Yes.
If you ask her directly about, like, when was the last incident of violence, that she may have felt she didn't unpack it and talk about it, risking re-traumatisation.
Yes.
But also perhaps not having enough time in that 15 minutes to then do those other
Right, okay, yeah, because she was on a timeline, a time frame, wasn't it? And also she's going to come back again and see somebody else, a counsellor, which then might unpack a lot more.
That is deeply.
That's right, yeah, where that was the information about what she might have.
It quite gave her a few hints though, but she didn't pick up on like, she said several times that it was different. She didn't explore that.
So the difference of the abuse, what was
She kept saying
happening?
it was different. What was it like before?
Mm.
And what's it like now? She didn't really go there. So that would have given you a better idea of how the escalation. Yeah, and whether that was going now dangerous, whether it now got to be dangerous.
That's a good point. Well, maybe that could be something that she might be able to look at and think, okay, this is something the counsellor needs to address.
Yeah,
As
but she
soon as
said
it
it quite a
is.
few times.
Yeah, yeah. So maybe that is a cue point. Okay, we need to address this. Thank you. So when we think about the responses, so we think about ask Penny if she felt safe to return home, and she did ask Penny if George was violent recently. Okay, wonderful. Anybody else? Any discussion about that one? We can move on to the next question. Yes, move on. Okay. Question 6. How did the worker check on the children's safety? So now we're actually identifying the children's safety. 2 responses. There was 4 there. Only asked about Penny's safety, asked if the children were sent to their bedrooms. Then there's asked questions about whether the children were present or where violence occurred, and asked questions about violence towards the children. What did you think actually occurred during that? The last 2, do you think? So ask questions about whether the children were present when violence occurred, and ask questions about violence towards the children. Okay. Anybody else got any other responses to that one? We'll move on to the next one. Okay, so this is about the referring process. What key steps did the worker take as part of the referral process? Explored options and risks involved? Did you do that? Brilliant. Considered what she thought would be in Penny's best interest as she knew what was best for the client. Considered the safety of Penny and her children? Yes. You did that? Right. Obtained Penny's verbal or written consent before referring?
Yep.
Okay, brilliant. And then explain that Penny would always be safe. These are things you're coming into, things that should not be said. Used Penny to contact police immediately without exploring options or risks involved, which isn't something to do as well. Okay, so about to go on to the next one, which is our last one for refer. What reporting requirements would the worker be expected to complete after the meeting is finished? Complete case notes, written record as required by your policy procedures. Undertake reporting is required for workplace policy, so mandatory reporting maybe? Yeah? Okay, and then we've got the contact, please follow up with referral agency. But you feel that was the first 2?
Yeah.
Everyone else any different to the first 2? Wonderful, well done everybody. So that's assessment 1. Any questions about how you've gone with that? Anything, any feedback that you'd like to discuss at this point about that? Assessment 1. Everyone feels quite okay with that and finishing that? Okay, brilliant. We're going to have a morning tea break, so also I might just come around and see how everyone has gone with that assessment, or if you want to come and talk to me, then I'm here. So we're going to have a morning tea break now for about 15 minutes, and then we'll come back and we'll have our module about self-care. Thanks everyone. Thank you.